Good morning, my beautiful friends. I'm a little bit late. Sorry about that. I was finishing up my personal practice and I took a shower because I needed it, and I know you're glad I did. So I am super excited about today's class, and I have to tell you, there are two warnings with this class. One, it's going to blow your mind. And two, we're going to be talking about some sensitive material today, specifically in reference to the book. We're still working with this book, Speak Peace in a World of Conflict. But should you always use the nonviolent communication methods? So we are going to be talking about some sensitive material, and I just want to let you know we're not going to be dropping any F-bombs or anything like that. But still, I want you to take care of yourself. I hope you're doing good. Still adjusting incoming present. I hope you've had a wonderful holiday. Yay. All things considered, I hope it was still heartfelt for you. So, we are going to be talking about how to end the power struggle and live with joy and confidence. We're going to be talking about, should we always be using these nonviolent communication methods? The answer is no. And we're going to talk about when and why you should not use this methodology and when you should. We want to be good stewards of our own souls, good keeper of our souls. All right, my beautiful friends. So today's class, we're going to start with some breath work. Then we're going to jump into our talk, and then maybe we'll pull a card. I can't see my cards, but we'll figure it out. We're just going to let it flow. So we're going to do alternate nostril breathing. And the reason why I decided to do that this morning is because when I was finishing up my yoga practice and doing my meditation, I realized that as I was doing my own visualization and just in general, when one nostril is open, it's easier for me to imagine, as an example, the light coming into the left side of the body when the left nostril's open. It's more difficult and this is my personal experience, it's more difficult for me to visualize the light. And when that happens, I notice that the right nostril's closed and vice versa. I also notice that when one nostril is open, that side of the body feels more open and balanced, right? And so there's this idea, I haven't really researched the whole science behind that, or even if there is science, this is my anecdotal experience, and alternate nostril breathing is really enjoyable. It helps you to get focused, and it does help you to feel balanced. Part of the practice of meditation that you and I are working on is how to be more present in the body. So our spiritual practice, even though we work with our angels and our guides and we get really into the woo, it's always grounded in the now. It's grounded in the body. We're not really going out there and living on some other plane necessarily. We're experiencing the balance between the spiritual world and the physical world. You and I are the meeting place between heaven and earth. We are meant to be walking like the shaman in both realities at the same time. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that as today's class goes on. And so as we're working on being more present in the body, feeling what's going on, because we're descending, right? We're descending and we're becoming closer to spirit, actually. Spirit's not out here. The experience of source and spirit isn't out here, it's actually inside. It's a very personal, close to you experience. And you can get through it. The body actually is a portal into that quote unquote dimension. It really is a portal into that dimension. And so if you've noticed, oftentimes when I'm leading the meditation, I'll ask you, notice if you're breathing through the right or the left nostril. So see if you can do that right now. Just take an inhale. And notice if you can feel the opening of the right or the left nostril. Inhale. Maybe both nostrils are open and you're inhaling evenly. So as you become more present, you become more sensitive to what's going on inside of you. And if you were to do nothing else for your meditation practice except notice what nostril you're breathing in and it will change following the breath in and out. That would be a beautiful meditation for a few moments. It would really help you to be very, very present and hopefully enter into that deeper inner dimension of connectedness. And so I was thinking this morning about source. So for me, source, spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, it's like a blanket of energy. Sometimes it's described as an ocean. That's what it feels like to me. And when I'm present, I enter into that ocean. That ocean is always present, but I'm not always present to it. So when I'm in it, some people just will call it the flow or the zone. They don't think about it at all. So as I enter into it, right, either through meditation, sometimes just looking out the window and there's a little hummingbird that comes by, there's this feeling of wellness, well-being. Have you felt that? I know you have, right? You've felt that feeling of well-being, feeling of love. It's a feeling of being wrapped up. That is source. That is God. It is ever present. For me, it's not a person. It is this energy. It is this ocean of consciousness that luckily, you and me and we can merge into. And it's intelligent. And that's where that term, the peace that passes understanding, comes from. There's no reason for the peace. It just comes. There's no reason for the joy. It just comes up in that moment. And it can be fleeting, right? Traffic starts, somebody starts calling your name, and then you're out of it. But isn't it beautiful that we can enter into it? And so as you do your meditation practice, or maybe you're gardening, or whatever you like to do, you're cultivating a practice, or I hope you are cultivating a practice that helps you to sink into that ocean. Because in my mind, it's very healing. And when you emerge from it, right, when we remove our attention away from it and we're back in the world, or when we're just dealing with things, dealing with people, you'll be amazed at the wisdom that comes up. You'll be amazed at how, things that used to bother you don't bother you anymore, or not as much. You'll walk away and say, boy, normally that person would have really just, pissed me off, but boy, I just didn't feel that way today. And it's not because you're disconnected, it's because you are very deeply connected. So that's like the after effect, right? The afterglow of being in that energy. So let's start our practice with the alternate nostril breathing. So I like to do it this way. All right, you got your little thing. And I don't know if you're mirroring me or what's happening. We're just going to do this together. So you're going to take your thumb on one side and you're going to inhale. And imagine the breath coming up into this area, into the third eye. Pinch and hold and exhale through the other side. Inhale. Imagine the breath coming all the way up. Pinch and hold and exhale. The other side. And that's one round, and we're going to do 7 rounds. You ready? I know you are. Get your fingers ready. All right, inhaling. Pinch and hold. Exhale. Inhaling. Pinch and hold. Exhale. Good. That's 1. Inhale. Pinch and hold and exhale. Inhaling. Pinch and hold and exhale. Good. Inhale. Pinch and hold and exhale. Inhale. Pinch and hold and exhale. That's 3. And just for time's sake, we'll do 1 more. Inhaling. Pinch and hold and exhale. Inhale. Pinch and hold and exhale. Good. And now place your hands palms up or palms down and you're on your thighs. Bringing your attention to the breath as it glides in and out through the nose. And just notice. Notice how that feels. Notice if you're breathing through the right or the left nostril, or maybe both nostrils are open and you're breathing evenly. Beautiful. And imagine the breath now as you inhale, that the breath is moving in behind the eyes and into the brain. When you exhale, exhale any tension, any self-doubt, just let it go, creating a space. Inhale, breathing into the space behind the eyes and into the brain. And when you exhale, imagine the brain relaxing. Inhale, behind the eyes and into the brain and down into the nervous system, down into the spine. Good. And exhale. And exhale any nervousness, any tension, any anxiety from the nervous system. Just let it go. Just relax into the chair and into the breath. Inhaling behind the eyes into the brain, into the nervous system, and imagine the breath traveling throughout the body, riding the nervous system. As you exhale, you release. Inhale, bringing vitality and energy, peace and calm. You can have it all. Breathe it in, all the way into the nervous system. And when you exhale, just release and relax. Good. Breathing in now, inhaling through the nose, behind the eyes, into the brain. Inhaling all the way down the length of the spine and down to the bottoms of your feet. Allowing the breath to fill the entire inner body. And exhale and just let go, just release. And again, inhaling. And exhale, good. And continue to breathe, mindfully imagining the breath filling the entire body. And imagine the body exhaling. So you're not just exhaling through the nose, but the entire body is releasing. You're exhaling through the pores, the skin. And when you inhale now, imagine the whole body taking the inhale. This beautiful energy, this ocean of consciousness, of love that we are living and swimming and moving in. Imagine it just coming all into the body, just breathing it in, and then you exhale into it. And if you can deepen your imagination even more, imagine that this consciousness is actually breathing into you. So it's causing the inhales and the exhales. It's pouring itself into you. Exhaling through you. Just like waves lapping up onto the shore. that this energy is breathing you, and you can relax into it. You can let your troubles go into it. You can release them. You can let this energy go into the places of the body-mind that hurt. And you can just receive it. You can allow it. Beautiful. Taking a nice, deep, conscious, connected inhale all the way down to the bottoms of your feet. And sigh it out. Wiggle fingers and toes coming all the way back to the room. Wasn't that wonderful? I know it was. Give yourself a hug. And give yourself another hug. You got to do a dance when you give yourself a hug. Maybe maybe some of you are still out of it, so I'll ring you back. Come back. Come back. All right, my beautiful friends. So please practice that on your own if you feel guided to do it. Didn't that feel good? Feels good to me. All right, so when don't we use these practices? Now, some people may be upset with me, but I've been doing a lot of contemplating and meditating on this and a little bit of research as well. And in the book, on chapter 1, there's 2 questions that he says. And I'm going to tell you why this came to be. The 2 essential questions that we ask ourselves when we are engaging in nonviolent communication. Remember, nonviolent communication really is an attitude towards life, as in my mind. It's an attitude towards life, towards living one's life. And it's also a technique. And he says, what's the 2 questions that we ask ourselves is, what's alive in us? What's alive? And that's beautiful. What's alive? What do I most need? What is my joy? What is alive in us? And the second one is, what can we do to make life more wonderful? Isn't that beautiful? What can I do to make life more wonderful for myself? What can I do to make life more wonderful for others? The epitome of living a spiritually conscious life is service, is actually living in service, right? Doesn't mean you have to quit your job and join the nunnery or anything like that, but that you have a consciousness of service and community. That is what all the master teachers from all the ages have taught us and have demonstrated in their lives. Is they've lived a life of service, right? They've lived a life because when we're serving each other, we're serving the source. We're serving source, and source is serving itself. And so that is, those are the 2 questions. Then on the next page, he goes, let's look at how nonviolent communication suggests that we let a person know what's alive in us in relationship to what they're doing. We want to be honest in nonviolent communication, but we want to be honest without using words that imply wrongness, criticism, insult, judgment, or psychological diagnosis. We're going to get into this in the next few weeks. And what I started thinking about personally is, what does one do if you are in an abusive relationship? Is it appropriate to use nonviolent communication? And if you are actively in an abusive relationship at home or at work, or maybe you're in a community situation, a volunteer situation that doesn't feel good to you. So there's a range of abuse. It can be psychological, emotional, physical, sexual. There's a range of it. And do we try and use nonviolent communication with the person that is causing us this pain? That is the abuser, with the trolls on the internet as an example. And I think not. I don't think that is, in my personal view, and I believe there's other views out there, it's probably not the best use It can very likely work against you. Yeah? I'm going to get a little deeper into this. You might not want to use it with all forms of negotiation. It's a very powerful negotiation technique. But there are times when maybe the practice of nonviolent communication, I'm going to be very clear about all of this, okay, because it's really about us, isn't good for all forms of negotiation. To use it as a spiritual bypass, I have been the spiritual bypass for a long time, not now, but in my past. And sometimes we use our spiritual practices and nonviolent communication, and we talk like this and everything. Everybody is just God on the inside. They're just spirit. They're just wounded children. And it's a spiritual bypass to not have to deal with the reality of what's going on. We're actually afraid of conflict. But let's remind ourselves, as an example, the master teacher Jesus. He was a rabble rouser. He was going into temples and turning things over, give unto God what is God and give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. That was actually a protest, right? That was very provocative at the time. And so sometimes we want to use some of these techniques to avoid doing the hard work in our lives. Now, he's not advocating that, but I want us to be clear. Okay, so it's not that you'll never have conflict again. And we don't want to use this stuff as a spiritual bypass. You don't use it to manipulate others. And we've talked about this in the past, that you don't use these techniques, these very powerful techniques, to try and get somebody else to change. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So let's start with being in an actively abusive relationship. Again, there's a range at home or at work, and with COVID, we know that there's a lot of concern that there are our babies and our sisters and our brothers at home, and they're in these situations that that are being underreported because everybody has been in lockdown. It's a very serious thing. So when we talk about nonviolent communication, we're talking about all of this stuff with regards to what's going on. We want to use our nonviolent communication on ourselves. I'm talking specifically about being in this abuse situation, which, by the way, I am going to be posting some resources. If you're not sure if you're in an abusive relationship, I'm going to post some resources for you to do some research. You don't try and talk to the abuser in a way using these methods if you need to leave, right? If you need to find a way out. If you need to protect yourself, if you need to protect your children. We don't want to do a spiritual bypass and say, well, this person is wounded and I wonder what his or her needs are. Doesn't matter. What matters is you, in this moment, taking care of yourself. And so Spirit was speaking to me this morning about this. There are two voices in your head when you're in it. And I know this because I've had these situations come up in my life. One voice, I'm going to call it is the voice of the abuser in your head, right? You don't feel good about yourself when you're in those situations. I don't care about your past. We're not psychoanalyzing, well, I had this stuff happen in the past, and it doesn't matter. When you're in it, you don't feel good, and you have this voice in your head that's telling you all the bad things about yourself. And I have a friend who would talk about this. She met her husband. They got married. She was 15 and he was 40. That in and of itself ain't right. Okay. So when I met her years later, they had been together for a very long time, and they had a grown son, and he had to go back to Mexico to go see his mother. And at this time, he was quite aged. And he would call her every day and browbeat her. What are you doing? Who are you with? I mean, he would just harass her on the phone constantly. And then one day it occurred to her, because he ain't coming back, he couldn't come back, I don't have to talk to you anymore. So she empowered herself in that situation. He was gone, and she empowered herself. And then, I have no judgment about this, he died. He had an accident and he died. So then he really wasn't coming back. But guess what? And because she and I would talk about this, he was in her head. She goes, I still hear him. I still keep myself from doing things because he is in my mind, right? I still hear that voice. So we all have that, but you have another voice in your mind. You have another voice inside. It's the voice of spirit. And that voice can be cultivated. So when we're using some of the principles, right, spiritual principles, you're using them to cultivate the power of that voice that is on the inside. That's the voice that's going to say, I think Ilana Vinzant, she's one of the spiritual teachers talked about, she was in a abusive relationship. And this voice said, he is going to hurt you, like kill you. That's what her voice said. And she got on a bus. That's her story. She got on a bus and got out of town. So there's this, and that's very dramatic, right? But you have this other voice inside that can be cultivated. So you cultivate that voice inside and you begin to take your attention away from the negative voice, the voice of the sometimes they call it the inner critic, right? The voice of the abuser, the voice of the inner critic. And you put your attention on the voice that says, you can do this. You got this. You're stronger than you think you are. You can do this. There is another voice inside of you that is cheering you on. You cultivate it through prayer. You cultivate it by looking for it. You cultivate it by looking for it everywhere. In success stories, reading stories of other people who have survived, who are survivors, who are thrivers, reading stories of people that climb mountains. I love those stories. Those extreme sport stories are so inspirational, right? Watch a comedy, anything that's going to help you feel that connection to that inner voice. Because what we're praying for and what we're knowing is courage, strength, and community, right? Courage, strength, and community. This is what we're praying on. This is what we're knowing. This is what we're uplifting. This is how you use your spiritual practice in a practical way. You need community. Maybe you're being harassed at work. You need community. You might need help. You might need the right attorney, the right HR person to listen to you, the right friend. And so when we're praying and when we're manifesting, right? Because manifesting isn't about stuff and things. Manifesting is about that change on the inside. And so when we're using our powers of manifestation, we're engaging this ocean, this source to say, thank you for bringing the right people to me. When I vision my life, a life of freedom, a life of independence, right? Independence from the things that are causing me harm, freedom from that level of suffering. When I imagine living in my joy, I am uplifting myself and connecting to that voice. And the next thing I know, the right card comes across my desk. The helper that I'm looking for maybe was underneath my nose the whole time, but I didn't see it, or I didn't have the courage to reach out and ask for help. Sometimes we think we have to do it all on our own, and we don't. So you cultivate that voice and you cultivate the prayer. Now, I am not talking about engaging the individual at this moment. Right? I'm not saying, well, this is what's alive in me. And I understand that you're being a big jerk because, you're not supposed to say big jerk. But you're acting in this way because your needs aren't being met. But this person might say, but I need you to act a certain way. So we're not even there. That's not what this book is for. If you are actively in that kind of environment and that kind of relationship. I hope I'm being clear and I hope I'm being sensitive, But I believe in you. I believe in the spirit that is in you. And I know that that spirit is stronger than anything else that's going on. It is powerful, and you have access to it. You can call it up from within you, and you will amaze yourself at what you can do. I know this. I know this, and I'm knowing it for you. If this is your situation, or if this is and it, like I said, it could be degrees, right? It could be in degrees. So I'm knowing this for you. So the second part, everybody take a deep breath. Sigh it out. So the second part is not using it for all forms of negotiation. This is meant for negotiation, restorative justice. I love restorative justice later, right? We're going to be talking about that. But there are forms of negotiation where, and I'm meditating on this still, where this doesn't feel like it is the right methodology. And it can be when you are in a power dynamic that is unequal, when you don't have any leverage. Okay. So one example that I was looking into was like you're going to your boss to say, well, what's alive in me, and using the techniques, and, and it can be very difficult when you are in that kind of situation. I find it that it's best when you're meeting as equals and you begin to have that conversation with someone, a difficult conversation. So sometimes you need a mediator. This is beautiful when there's a mediator. But if you're feeling like you're the victim, or you're feeling like, my mother used to say, S rolls downhill. If you're feeling like that and you're not on equal footing, then maybe take a step back. And there are other kinds of negotiation techniques that you can use. There are other avenues that you can use. So I just want us to be responsible. This is one tool, Spirit speaking to me. This is just one tool in your toolbox. It's not all the tools. There's lots of other tools. Sometimes you just need a new job. Just need to go. So using it as a spiritual bypass. So the spiritual bypass is, we are knowing that ocean of consciousness lives in and through all beings. But remember what I said at the beginning, it's turning your attention to it. That is a conscious thing. In the Christian, spirituality, form of spirituality, we talk a lot about free will, right? There's this free will. And so the free will is turning your gaze towards the divine. That takes will. It's up to you to do it or not. So yes, everyone is divine. Everyone has that voice inside of them. We are all daughters and sons of the Most High, however you want to put it, but not everybody is using that energy appropriately. And so sometimes we use that terminology, the spiritual terminology, that people just aren't connected to what's alive in them, right? In this case, not using what's alive. They're not connected to that. They don't understand how to get their needs met, to not really dig into what's important and not advocate for yourself, right? So it might be that you're using the spiritual bypass and actually not having difficult conversations. You're just making an assumption, as an example. Well, we're just all spiritual. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to know all of this. And then I'm just going to raise my vibration and I'm going to float on out of this situation. When the life, which is a beautiful teacher, is saying, actually, you need to confront this situation and life will support you in confronting this situation. So with all of this, it's broad, and you need to use your best judgment. You need to use discernment, right? And you need to practice. Discernment comes through experience. You need to practice. Sometimes we try a communication technique and it doesn't work. That happens. Like, well, that backfired spectacularly, right? That happens. They backfire spectacularly. You make little notes, and then you assess what goes wrong, what went wrong, and then you try it again. Doesn't mean you don't do it. It means maybe that's not the right technique, or I didn't apply it appropriately. can't use it to manipulate other people. These are very powerful techniques that you're using. And so if you're entering into a situation where you really want to use these techniques with someone in your life and it's appropriate, you're like, I am down with the nonviolent communication. We're gonna connect with how we need, but your real intention is to manipulate that person into seeing your point of view, then you're not really communicating. Communication is about listening. It's really about wanting to hear the other person, what's in their heart. What are they most wanting? What is alive in them? I'm really curious about what is most alive in you. But if you're doing it as a means to an ends, then you're using it as a manipulation technique. And that oftentimes, that's just bad karma. I mean, I'm not being flip about bad karma. I mean, this stuff tends to, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. You're just going to experience that same manipulation. It's going to come back to you, especially if you're doing it consciously, right? We do things unconsciously, but, using it for manipulation. If you go to my website and you read my about page, I think it's on there. I'm not sure anymore. But I'm a practitioner of NLP, and NLP there's a lot of crazy that goes on with NLP. So if you do some research, there's some good, there's some bad, but I have found it to be very powerful in addition to using my meditation mindfulness. And it teaches you to be a really good listener. So I was in a business situation, and I'm talking to this week, and I'm talking to, I work in IT. I'm talking to this guy in IT. And he asks a question about security, like, why do we even need this? Now, it was a bizarre question to ask considering his position, but my training has taught me to just kind of sit back instead of being critical, because I'm curious why he's asking that question. Because I'm there to help him solve his issues. I'm there as an act of service. I'm not just trying to sell him something. I'm there as an act of service. And so if I'm going to serve him, and his organization, what's most alive in him, so you can take your spiritual practice, and you should be taking it everywhere. I take it into my work, all of my work. So if I'm there to serve him, I need to really understand what his core issue is. Now, sometimes the issue is just he wants to be in control of the process. That was my determination. And that's okay. I don't have an ego about that, because I know at the end of the day, this is all going to be a win-win. I'm not trying to convince him or make him feel bad or use manipulation techniques. I really want to understand what his needs are. That's different than trying to change someone or trying to get them to do something that they wouldn't do otherwise. There's I don't know if you know I can't think of the guy's name. He writes the Dilbert cartoons. And in 2016, before Trump was elected, he predicted Trump was going to be elected. And he was on the news, and he wrote a book about this. And I was very curious about it. So I downloaded the books. I love Audible. Love Audible. And I'm listening, and he uses in this book very manipulative circular language. So I turned it off and sent it back. So part of that is when you're reading these books and when you're studying all of this, you're actually learning how to listen for that so that you're not being manipulated. I know it's kind of a side thing, but we want to be very mindful in how we use our language. That's how powerful you are. That is the power of your word. So when do you use nonviolent communication? Like I said, I really believe it's an attitude towards life on one level. I really do believe that. Instead of, like, I called somebody a jerk. I'm sorry. But really, the reality is that rather than calling people names, right, we call out the behavior. And it's very powerful. It's very powerful. So maybe you don't like a certain person, right? Or you don't like what they do. So you want to focus on the behavior. And that really is just a way of looking at the world. And it feels good, to be honest with you, because you're not constantly at war and in this power struggle. You use it towards yourself, right? How do we speak? Are you calling yourself a name? What is that voice inside your mind saying, right? Inside your head? Is it nice to you or not? So the language with which you speak to other people oftentimes is the language with which you speak to yourself, or the language and how you allow people to speak to you is how you speak to yourself. So it's very important that we use these, we speak to ourselves in a nonviolent way, and that we are the lover of our own souls. Yeah? Yes. Yes, of course, we use it in negotiation, right? If we're negotiating, maybe you have to negotiate with your teenager, especially if in lockdown, right? Communicate with him or her. Communication with your spouse, right? So we use it for better communication with people who are interested in communicating with us. See, that's the other caveat. Where people have a buy-in on, well, we have a vision, we both want to get here. That's the beautiful part of negotiation. Ultimately, we have the same objective. We're disagreeing about process. So maybe let's get on board with what our mutual objective is and move our egos out of it. This can be very, very helpful for that. It's beautiful, right? Restorative justice, which we're going to talk about. Instead of being punitive with ourselves, being punitive in our communities, we can use it for restorative justice. In situations where you need a mediator, right? Or maybe you are the mediator and you can use that. So I'm not saying that it's not powerful, but we always want to be careful with saying, oh, this is the thing and it's going to fix all of my woes, right? We want to be responsible, and I want to be responsible as well. So, my beautiful friends, that is what I have been dying to share with you this Saturday morning. And I was looking for my cards. I'm going to get them. Just a second. There they are. There they are. Da, da, da. I'm back. So we'll finish with a card. If you have any questions, you can email me or message me. Just know that I don't always check the messages. I don't like the messenger coming up on my phone, but I will check. So if you have any questions about this or comments and you don't want to make them public, that's fine. Just put them in the messenger, or you can email me at Krista@myjoycode.com. And I will do my best to answer them. And then also, I have the spiritual mentorship program starting in the new year. And what the purpose of that, we're going to be talking about manifesting, but it will give us an opportunity to really connect. So instead of me just talking at you on Saturday mornings, I hope you feel like we're together. I want to hear from you too. So you can, if you have something that you really want to work on in 2021, the spiritual mentorship program might be a great opportunity for you. And it's very, very affordable. It can be donation. Okay. So with all of that, everybody take a deep breath. Sigh it out. Yes. What does Spirit have to say to us today? Because I've been talking a lot. I'm so glad you're here. All right. Let's see. Which one do you want? This one. This is the one. The breaking. Ooh, look at that. That's very powerful. That's a very powerful card. I think these are my favorite. I'm going to do a bonus video on tarot because I probably have 20, maybe 15 packs of these. Like tarot and the cards in general. Not all of them are tarot cards. Like these aren't tarot cards. The breaking. This oracle brings compassionate guidance that no matter what sadness or anger, despair, or frustration you may feel, you are being pulled apart not by dark forces, but by the loving embrace of the divine as it strips you of that which would keep you from your divine realization. Can I get an amen? That voice. Let go and break. It is going to be the making of you. Isn't that perfect for today? I know it is. I know it is. All right, my beautiful friend. Thank you. And I will see you next week.